Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a2b podcast, where we talk about our gaming perspectives and how video games shape and change our lives. Today's topic, we are going to be discussing controversial takes and opinions on video games, video game industry, things like that. I am Daisy. I am from the YouTube channel Amdrag, short for American Drag. I am here with Damian from Beyond Brainwaves. Damian, if you want to say what's up.
Hi, what's up?
There you go. Very well done. We are also here with our friend Two Dens from the YouTube channel Two Dens, which is probably the most relevant in this subject matter because they are known for discussing their opinions, retrospectives, and whatnot on their very gaming-oriented channel. Two Dens, say hi.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you.
All right. So with all that said, we can roll the intro. All right. With all that set aside and done, Damian, this was kind of your idea. This is something that I feel like you just had some sort of passionate flame inside you that absolutely had to escape your mouth today. So please hit us with your hottest of hot takes. We would love to hear it.
Okay. So, our thoughts were, to kind of present our most controversial takes, video game takes. And I've kind of hinted at it, like in previous episodes, to kind of start some drama in this podcast because who doesn't need some drama?
Yeah, you don't like how well we're getting along.
Yeah.
You'd prefer if there was some tension in the community.
You want to make us angry.
Yeah. And just before saying, I just want to make clear that all my opinions, everything I say is objectively true. There is no subjective truth. Like everything I say is objectively true, and if you disagree, well, then you're just wrong to all the listeners.
I see. Gotcha.
So I'm just gonna present it. I'm just gonna state it to get it over with. I believe that Mario Odyssey is the worst Mario game ever made, and I wouldn't say one of the worst games I played, but the ones that I enjoyed the least.
Interesting.
And, Damian, that's a stupid opinion. Damian, that's dumb.
Mario Odyssey.
What a dumb thing to say. How interesting.
Well, hear me out first.
All right, I'll hear you out.
No!
I imagine all of us have played this game before.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Like a lot.
Okay. So when did you guys play it? When it came out?
Yeah, on
But
release.
after that?
On release. My
Launch
wife and I
and then
played
a
it
couple
together.
years later.
And then my wife
Same.
got
Yeah.
every single shine or whatever. What are they called?
Every single little moon.
Yeah, every
moon
moon.
baby. Moon medal, I think they called them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I played it at launch, and then I played it later with my kids, and my thought was, wow, this sure does hold up. This might be the greatest Mario game ever made.
They actually just
go ahead.
updated it for the Switch too, so now I kind of feel like I need to see the updates. All right,
I think I might as well. I think maybe I'll stop podcasting right now and go do that instead of listening to this nonsense.
All right, Damian, give us the reasons.
David,
I want to know.
it's okay to have wrong opinions. We all have the right to have wrong opinions from time to
Okay,
time.
defend yourself already. I'm not buying it.
Okay, so as you mentioned, there's the moons, right? In other 3D Marios, you tend to have stars. Even, I guess in Mario Sunshine, you have the shines. But usually how it's going in Mario games is that, you have multiple ways of completing these kind of sandbox levels, right? And a lot of it is dependent on skills, it's kind of like an obstacle course and a bit of exploration. Mm-hmm. And usually, for example, in Mario 64, there's 120 stars. So here we have almost 900 power moons in Mario Odyssey. And my problem is not the quantity itself. The thing is that for the quantity, they had to sacrifice quality, in my opinion. So I think a lot of stars in previous Mario games are very memorable. Maybe you had to race someone, you had to beat a boss, or something like that. Especially Mario 64, whenever you get a star, you feel some sense of accomplishment, because, you had to go through some interesting, through a roller coaster ride, if you will, of exploration or of platforming. And this is definitely not the case, in Mario Odyssey, where honestly, a lot of moons feel like simple fetch quests or trivial tasks, like finding a seed or, kicking a certain rock. Wow, you got a moon. Awesome. Great sense of accomplishment. And this to me... Yeah, go ahead.
I see where you're going.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. But also, there are the quests that are like they are in Mario 64, where you do have to do something really cool, or like the whole tank turret section, or in the galaxy where everything is like growing and stuff like that. Like I remember being like blown away at like all the things you had to do, and I mean, come on, okay, the jump up superstar segment, right? Like I know that it's kind of like bringing out like a cannon to respond to you at first, but that was such a beautiful, great moment that is like equally, if not more memorable than like I think that there might be a huge issue of these like rose tinted glasses where you're looking at something that's nostalgic for you and seeing it as superior, when I think that Mario Odyssey, like, I mean, come on, can we not objectively say that like in every aspect, like, is it not a better video game? Has it not improved on its own formula in every possible way? Like I think that game is full of memorable moments. I mean, what do you think, Tudens?
Yeah, it is. It's every level has something, right? Every level has something that's like a big set piece. I can think off the top of my head of, it's been years since I played it, but the Jump Up Superstar is a good example. We've got the boss fight, the Chomp Chomp boss fight from the Fossil Zone.
Yep.
We've got
being a dinosaur.
Yep, being a dinosaur. That's right. That's incredible. That whole mechanic is crazy. We've got the races in the ice zone where you're like, I think you're like riding on top of a snowman or a polar bear or something like that.
Absolutely. That absolutely has the quality of the penguin belly sliding ice races.
So I see where you're going, Damian, but the thing is that all of that 120 stars from N64 is in Odyssey. There's just also a lot extra. Right there, and yes, okay. Yeah. I want you to keep defending yourself, but the 120 stars from N64, I don't know how many shines were in Sunshine. Does anyone know?
I do not know.
I don't know. It's more than 120. The X number of shines that are in Super Mario Sunshine, those are in Odyssey as moons. There's just a lot of extra stuff too.
There's also like, if you can't act like all of the stars are like winners in Mario 64, right? Like there are dud stars. There are stars that are like not fun to get that you don't remember, But I do think there is maybe, and I don't want to pivot away because I want to keep bullying Damian, but I do want to think that like, there may be a larger conversation about accessibility in video games that's happening here, because I do believe that Mario Odyssey, one of the reasons why there were so many moons and you needed so few to leave the stage. I know the way that I played it, I just played in the play place until I was done, and I did not get every moon, but I just hung out on every world. I just felt like when I felt like I'd seen everything, I'd get in my ship and fly to the next one. But as far as like what you need to do to move on, there is a much bigger gap. I've gone back to play Mario 64 recently, and it is quite a challenge to get back in there and really like you have to do things. It's not a super linear game, but it has a little bit of that linearity where you unlock a new stage, you do have to get a few stars out of it. And the moons really lowered the barrier to like complete the game and get to the next segment. And maybe that was part of the reason for the design choice. There were some things that you could do that would net you like 10 at a time or whatever. But no, let the bullying commence. Damian, please rebuttal. You're on the defense.
Yeah. Like, first of all, I think, there might be some good stars, honestly, even like the dinosaur or the things you mentioned. they, for me, they were not that interesting. Like, I think they were not something revolutionary for the Mario formula. I don't think they fit that well. I think later on, we can maybe compare it to Super Mario Wonder, because I don't think I'm wearing rose-tinted glasses and seeing everything worse in Mario Odyssey because it's new, because I really loved Mario Wonder, for example.
That's fair.
And
also,
it's
completely based video
very
game.
good game. Very good game.
Yeah. And it's done a lot of new things. It really did a lot of different things for the Mario formula, things that we wouldn't, expect, like a lot of wacky, kind of trippy things sometimes. But still, I think it is much, much better designed. In the end, obviously it was a bit of a joke that I said in the beginning, especially when it comes to video games, there's always something subjective involved. Honestly, I couldn't even put it to words. Like, I can tell you a bit of how it was for me. I was super hyped to get the game. I got it on launch day. I thought, wow, it's going to be the best, Mario game so far. And I played it a bit, and even like in the beginning, I didn't enjoy the atmosphere that much, but it was like, okay, fine, whatever. But then I kept playing, and I noticed that it just wasn't fun. That whenever I was about to think, okay, I can maybe play a bit of Mario Odyssey, but I don't feel like it. Then I noticed more and more that it was really like a chore, that I was playing Mario Odyssey more to finish it or to complete it rather than that it was fun for me. And it's really,
that's interesting.
Like, it's been very rare for me that a game has been so not fun in my life.
What was your completion level?
Yeah.
Did you finish it?
Did you finish?
I didn't finish it.
You didn't
finish it.
Finish it. So you didn't get to the moon. Did you get to the moon? Because I can tell you,
I was, I think, at the cake part. Like, it's been a really long time.
Oh my god!
The
okay,
cake.
all right. Yeah, so I mean, the Food Kingdom is
Oh.
what Damian's talking about, and I just like, oh my god. Okay. So for if you're listening to this podcast, you need to know that I've been narrowing my eyes and shaking my head, and like there's been a lot of like physical gesticulation on my little square of the chat here. Yeah, I mean you're so wrong, and it's so. See, the thing is that I pity you. I feel bad for you that like you were playing this and you weren't filled with the same whimsy that I was, because my feeling playing this was like it was essentially like. So when I was a kid, I was a PlayStation kid, and it took a while before I had a Nintendo 64, and I did eventually get one. But I remember when I was in elementary school, there was Mario and all the Got Milk ads, and he'd be like big ass Mario, with the milk mustache. And I remember like, oh, that's the game that I want to play that I don't have access to right now is Mario 64. I don't have that. I never owned a copy of it. I only ever got to like play it at a friend's house or whatever. But there's something about that where it's like it's this incredibly magical experience. Because I played the hell out of like the 2D Mario games. And when I finally got Mario 64, it was like a revelation. It was like, wow, this is a better 3D platformer. This is genius game design. And it was one of the first times where in my head, I felt like I was thinking like a game designer. And I can feel how like you have made this experience beautiful and big and vivid, and you have maintained everything about the spirit of this character. And then we had a huge dearth. I do love Mario Sunshine. I don't want to bury that game. But like to me, that's one of the lower points of the 3D Marios where I just didn't have the je ne sais quoi. And I think part of it was because it was very contained to the tropical theme. But when Odyssey finally rolled around, Galaxies are bomb too. I defend those. But when Odyssey rolled around,
I'm just going to jump in here. I do think Galaxy is far superior to Mario 64. I think Galaxy is on a totally different level. And I
think Galaxy 2 is a perfect game.
Yeah, Galaxy 2 is a perfect game. I do, and I would probably say that Galaxy and Galaxy 2 are probably better than Odyssey 2. So I'm going to go a little bit on with Damian, but yeah, I want you to keep going because you're right about the whimsy. Like Mario Odyssey had just it was like a magical experience from like start to finish. Like there were a couple of worlds that I thought were a little bit boring. Like the forest was a little boring. Right. But like we get to the moon, the ending when you just finish the game, right? Not even complete the game, because
the ending is so good.
The ending is
when
ridiculous.
You really do it.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Damian, if you ever get the chance, I do think you should at least finish. I know you don't want to because you were like, man, this is a drag, right? But if you ever are compelled, the ending of this game is very, very good.
Yeah, the very ending of Odyssey is one of the most satisfying, like, catharsis moments that I could think of, like, any game. And that is something that Nintendo has gotten really, really good with, like, all of a sudden, is that they know how to do these, like, big blow-off moments that really, like, pay tribute to, like, what has come before.
Did you...
And it's like...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Did either of you... Did you guys finish Tears of the Kingdom?
Yeah.
Did you finish that?
I have not finished Tears of the Kingdom.
See, right there. Oh my gosh. Look, Tears of the Kingdom has problems, right? And we're talking about Mario Odyssey in the context of Tears of the Kingdom here. Tears of the Kingdom has problems, but the ending of Tears of the Kingdom is like... It's like one of the most incredible moments in a video game I've ever experienced. And I have experienced a lot of incredible moments in video games, but Tears of the Kingdom, it like sticks in my head. And I'm not like a huge... like reaction person, like if you talk about YouTube reactions, but I specifically went to like kind of more known YouTubers that I'm aware of, and I wanted to see how they reacted to the end of Tears of the Kingdom because it's it's kind of so out there. It's just and that you're right, that's a Nintendo thing, and it's a similar vein to Odyssey. Honestly, like Breath of the Wild pales in comparison, I would, in my opinion, to the ending of Odyssey and the ending of Tears of the Kingdom, the ending of Breath of the Wild. So you're right. They have these crazy endings. Damian, you gotta see the Odyssey ending someday.
There's a really... I want you to see that too. And I plan on going back to Tears of the Kingdom with the Switch 2 and, checking that out. That's when I'm planning on finishing it. But there's also... I have to ask you, have either of you played Mario Kart World?
I have played a little bit of Mario Kart World. Yeah.
Okay. So you said a little bit, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but the Rainbow Road in Mario Kart World is like on the same level, adapted for the kind of game that it is.
Interesting.
And it's something that they've just gotten really, really good at. And so I'm trying to imagine, Damian, I'm trying to imagine you playing through New Donk City. I'm trying to imagine you doing the Jump Up Superstar segment and being bored and being mad and being unhappy. Like, that is bewildering. Like, I literally felt like I was a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
It was an incredible moment.
Yeah. So I think for me, it was probably the best and most memorable moment, the Jump Up Superstar thing.
I think it's meant to be.
I think the gameplay itself, I don't remember it being like super interesting. But the whole aesthetics, how it was directed as an experience, I think it was really nice.
Yeah.
And I remember it was like they used the song in the trailer, and I think the song is great, and that they used Pauline and all of that.
Yeah.
And it was like a big reason why I was so hyped.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, like New Donk City was not so other than that, it was not interesting. Even the forest place.
I thought there were some pretty cool parts of New Donk City. I mean,
I love the underground segments and the whole taking the creatures to cruise around the power lines.
Putting together the band, I really liked putting together the band, and there's a moment where you can spell out Mario, and that's really simple, right? But it's fun, It's enjoyable. I liked New Donk City.
In the end, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, but
True.
Sometimes. I think I'm the only one wearing glasses, so it doesn't work. I guess.
I'm supposed to. I just don't because they don't agree with my lighting.
Oh.
I'll be blinding everybody with a constant anime push-up moment.
I like those.
So I think, Damian, here's your homework, okay? You need to play Odyssey, and you need to finish it. And then if you still don't like it, then you should make sure you do all the post game. And if you still don't like it after that, then you need to go through and get every single moon. And then I'll entertain the idea that it's not like, in the pantheon of greatest Mario
That's a
games
lot of
ever.
homework.
So there's your very unrealistic expectations that completely disregard your emotions and opinions.
Yeah.
So
And your schedule.
well done.
And whatever else you're playing right now.
Yeah.
If
Put all that aside.
If this video gets more than, let's say, 1,000 likes, I'm gonna try playing Mario Odyssey again, which honestly is torture to me. Okay, not torture, but it's like super, super boring. Like it's one of the games I'm the least looking forward to playing again.
Ridiculous.
Like,
Absolutely
there are
ridiculous.
games that I think are really worse, like that are objectively worse.
I would
Mario
hope
Odyssey.
so, my God. If you're going to be like Bubsy 3D is better than Mario Odyssey,
I'm going to
get on a plane.
I'm going to state
a frying pan.
I'm going to state my controversial opinion now because I think it's going to make Damian mad. Possibly. All right. So, you guys know Dragon Quest, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Why, that's one of Damien's favorite franchises. I think we've talked about it in every episode so far.
We have. I'm specifically talking about a game, maybe 6 or 7 years ago it came out. Dragon Quest XI. Everyone loved that game. 10 out of 10s across the board. It was the second coming of Final Fantasy VII or whatever you want to call it. I hated that game.
Echoes of an Elusive Age.
Yes, Echoes of an Elusive Age.
Yeah.
I hated that game. And the reason I hated
it?
here's the reason I hated it. I hated that game because it was a traditional Dragon Quest game. And here's the thing. So, Dragon Quest is legendary. I can't argue against that, right? Dragon Quest's been around forever, and when they came out, they were revolutionary, right? I get it. The music was great. The monster designs are unique. The monster designs are actually what inspired Pokemon. So I can't not acknowledge that, right? It's got
almost all RPGs in the history of
It's got a good like a great art style. It's got the it's not Ken's. Who's the one who did Dragon Ball Z?
Toriyama.
Yeah. It's his art style. I have to appreciate that. But Dragon Quest XI is garbage. I really dislike it, and here's why. Garbage. Here's why. First of all, it has the traditional Dragon Quest music. And when I say traditional, I mean traditional. They have the same styling. Yeah, it's done with a full orchestra, right? But they repeat the music in the game over and over and over. And it's not like Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy traditionally has very, like, melancholy, like, soothing kind of ambiance music going on in most cases, and then when the time calls for it, it's very cinematic. It's got like this full orchestra like parade going on in my headphones, right? The whole time I'm just running around and fighting regular monsters, right? Even the nighttime music in the like darker zones is still like just blaring in my ears, and it's just constant. So the music gets really grating, and it happens really, really fast, right? And there isn't any music that's like really, really good. We're not talking about Prelude from Final Fantasy VII. That thing is like a masterpiece, right? We're not talking about like Zelda music, which is basically mostly masterpieces, right? We're talking like the constant blaring
Except
trumpets.
Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have their own style of music, which I do like.
Which is much, much worse than any...
They went a little Minecraft, right?
They did go a little Minecraft. That's
kind of how I felt.
They did. But you know what? I love Minecraft music. I play Minecraft music every single day at work where I teach, and I have it on in the background so the kids don't drive me insane, right?
I think that's great.
For me just as much as it is for them, right? And Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom went with that, right? And I don't fault them for it. So, but the music in Dragon Quest XI is constant. It's in your face. It's very loud, right? It's just very grating. Okay, so we get to the battle system. Most RPGs that have been around a long time have evolved their battle system, but Dragon Quest XI has not. Dragon Quest XI's battle system is exactly what it was 25, 30 years ago, however long until the first one. It's
exactly.
very basic. It's not there are some minor things, but it's essentially
it does have this pep up thing. This,
pep up.
like,
All
super
pep up
move
thing is
thing.
all the pep up thing was just like super mode. Like that's all it really is, you know. So it's basic. There's no timers. There's no timing. You know, Final Fantasy VII, which came out in like 1996 or whatever, had the a2b system, which was revolutionary at the time, right? They could have at least had something like that, but no, it's just basic. Like it's just pure turn-based, purely turn-based.
Yeah,
it's like Pokemon. Yeah. And now I'm not going to fault the names of the abilities, because Japanese RPGs sometimes have weird names for abilities. Like, I don't know why they're called these super, super strange names. They are, but Final Fantasy does it. I'm sure the Tales games do it. You know, I get it, right? But the ability names are all over the place. The voice acting was okay. It wasn't amazing. It was okay. I really did like what was the entertainer's name? Do you guys remember? What was his name? See, a lot of the characters are very not memorable to me, but this guy was. What was his name? Sorry, Damian.
Sylveon.
Something. There was exactly one emotional moment in the entire game that got me, and if you know what happens in the game, you're probably thinking of that one moment, because it's the only moment in the whole game, right? It's the only like emotional, like gut punch moment in the whole game where the game is actually like successfully setting something up, having it pay off is a weird term for it, but having it happen and actually having like consequences for it, because otherwise nothing. The story is just like bad guy bad dragon bad, you good guy, go do good guy things, right? Which is what the first Dragon Quest was. But you know what? I'm pretty sure there were other Dragon Quest games with more interesting stories. Final Fantasy games have incredibly complex like stories with different themes and different like messages, and Dragon Quest story is bad guy bad, be a good guy, go do good guy things. Like, that's what the story is. That's what it is.
I think this is really interesting, because we're looking at, these are both square.
Yeah,
right? So
they're both square.
I feel and I feel like that's the point, right? Is that we have like Final Fantasy that has like a lot of innovation and a lot of steps forward and a lot of like exploration, and they're poking at the boundaries. But I think people like Dragon Quest because it doesn't do a lot of that. But really, Damian, you know, we've talked a lot about how you're really big on Dragon Quest. And, you know, I'm getting the feeling that Tudens and I both fall into the Final Fantasy category, which is probably the mainstream category to be in. So what is it? What is it about Dragon Quest that keeps that at your top?
Yeah, like I think, like for me, I've played Final Fantasy 1 and Final Fantasy 7. I haven't played a lot of the others, but I'd like to play more of them.
You should play Final Fantasy 9.
9 is my favorite. 9 and 10.
Eek. Good.
But for me personally, I think it comes down to the vibes. I think I just value the simplicity more. I didn't, for example, enjoy at all the materia thing in Final Fantasy VII.
I can understand that.
On the original one. I didn't care about it at all. I think it was very weird and kind of like inconsistent to me that, you know, you can just give this ability to whoever you want, which makes, you know, you don't have like the typical classes, or at least as far as I know. Final Fantasy.
It was very thematic for the game. It was very good Ludo narrative.
Yeah.
But you're right in terms of that. Like, it wasn't, you know, you didn't have a very clear, oh, this is my wizard, oh, this is my berserk, or whatever. I would say Remake and Rebirth actually do the materia system better than the original, which makes sense because they're, you know, they're modern games and they have a lot more thought behind them than the original. But yeah, I get it with materia. Go on, Damian. Go on. For sure.
Yeah, I think, like, first of all, I just really like the simplicity. Even Dragon Quest 1, the first one, I was really hooked on it. And I think it's kind of, you know, just a personal thing. I could really understand a lot of people not enjoying Dragon Quest 1. But I like simple combat. I like simple stories. I think very often stories try to be too complicated and then kind of fall on their nose. And I would rather prefer a nice, simple, story that is like very good, doesn't have a lot of flaws, even if it's not very revolutionary. And the same goes for the battle system. I would rather have a battle system that just works, that's enjoyable to use, than another new great thing that no one has ever come up with, but no one really cares about. Like Octopath Traveler, it's nice. I enjoy the mechanic, but it doesn't make me enjoy the battles anymore than it actually does.
I feel like
And I
Octopath
think-
Traveler had a pretty basic. I guess they had the break system.
Yeah.
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 With the turns or whatever.
Yeah.
Like for me, what I enjoyed the most is, kind of like in D&D, right? I don't know if you guys have ever played that much D&D.
Yeah, I'm a D&D person.
Yeah, same. And the combat is quite simple, but I think the interesting thing that comes from it is, how you use it, and how the characters interact during the combat. And I think in Dragon Quest XI, for example, the interactions between the characters in the combat are much more interesting to me than those in like Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah,
for
I don't
example.
remember any interactions with the characters in Dragon Quest XI.
They don't interact in like a scripted way, but it's like, you have the healer who is the healer, and you have the assassin or whatever, and each one of them has their own playing style. The one is more defensive, the other one is more offensive, and they need to improve their stats in different ways. And so basically you have simple combat mechanics, but you have them from various different perspectives, pun intended. So for me, this is like good enough. And I don't like, for me, it's more enjoyable to kind of decompress during a combat, to kind of come home after an annoying or a tiring day of work, and then you can just turn it on, and you can just you don't need a lot of timing, you don't need to scroll through menus a lot or whatever. You just do the combat.
You just press Kang Blast or whatever they called whatever.
Yeah. Clang.
Clang.
Yeah,
Hatchet
Clang,
Man. Bizzle.
or Riz, or
Yep.
I actually played through it entirely in Japanese, so I don't even remember even both the voice acting and the.
I wonder if the voice
text
acting
of
is
the
better
game
in
itself.
Japanese. It I can't say it was bad in English. It was just there. It was just there.
Well, it wasn't very organic.
Yeah.
In English, it was very much they're playing to the scenario and to the scene, and it really felt like it was very classic again. It felt like very classical voice acting. I don't think anyone was bad. I think all the voice actors were quite good at what they were doing. But the way that the lines are delivered and the way that the script was worked out, it's very difficult. Again, this just feels like two totally different beasts. If you're holding it up next to like the Final Fantasy VII remakes, it's nowhere near the same class of like writing or chemistry or delivery or gameplay, or
those games are like they're like movies, they're like cinematic experiences.
And as somebody, I know we all probably play a lot of like indie games and stuff, and there's so much merit to be found in deconstructions. And so I can appreciate what Dragon Age does. I do think that if you were to hold it next to a modern Final Fantasy product, I think it's very, very easy to bully Dragon Age. I think it's very, very easy to say that, the modern Final Fantasy games are stronger, more inventive, more creative, or whatever. But that would be discarding the fact that that we really do have we're very privileged in that we have AAA studios developing classic RPGs and that want to be experienced that way. Yeah. And so while I can definitely appreciate it's not your cup of tea, and I would say it's not mine either. I did enjoy my time with it for what it was.
But you say we're very
interesting.
privileged for having AAA companies that make these RPGs, but and sure, absolutely. I mean, games are ridiculously expensive to make, and they take thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hours from hundreds of employees. But, there's a new game out. It's called Claire Obscura Expedition 33. It was made by like 30 people, independent French game company it's a really, apparently, a very in-depth, very interesting JRPG style game with a really unique story. And that was made by a few people, independent thing. I plan on playing it. I think you guys should too. It sounds like it's crazy good.
Yep.
And they clearly doing something, They're clearly doing something.
No, you're right.
Like even games done by one person, like Papers, Please or whatever, can be really good.
Stardew Valley
doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Dave's Story, go all the way back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
in the end, I think it comes down to like personal preference.
Right.
But I think if you really like traditional RPGs, JRPGs, then a lot of, like, especially Final Fantasy, just at a certain point, especially like with the remakes, from what I know, I haven't played them, but my impression is that they are more like cinematic games that have like JRPG or action RPG elements, but they're not the true JRPG experience like from the SNES days.
Yeah. I mean,
they're not. But what they do really well is in Final Fantasy VII, and this needs to be said, is that the a2b system, Tudens just said how revolutionary that was, and we've seen it in other games, but the remakes of Final Fantasy VII revolutionized the revolutionary a2b system.
They did.
It did a2b and materia in a new way that was like, it was really very beautifully and truthfully seeing through like the through line of what they envisioned with creating Final Fantasy VII. So I really want it to be out there that like those games are video games. They are video games. They are not cinematic. They are not like you're watching a movie. They are like the most cinematic of its kind. They're full of mini games, and they're full of little weirdness, and they're full of exploration. And I really think if you ever get the opportunity to, I think that you would dig those so much more than the original, based on what you're saying.
All three of those.
I mean, I really enjoyed the original. Yeah. Also,
Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and Rebirth. All three of them have super challenging super bosses that you have to have an in-depth understanding of the mechanics of the game to even have a chance of beating. And that's true of a game from 1996. It's true from a game from 2019,
2024,
and 2024. All three of those games, and they're very faithful to each other. Remake and Rebirth are faithful to the original Final Fantasy VII, despite having an action-based combat system, which is crazy. And with Dragon Quest, I mean, get it. Like, people like it simple, people like it traditional, but I'm right now playing through Pokemon Red, or rather Blue, for the first time in like 25 years, and I think it has more depth than Dragon Quest XI combat system. I think it does. I think it does so. Because hold on. With Pokemon Blue, you have up to 6 Pokemon, right? And you're going against the computer, right? And you have the choice, you can switch between 5 other Pokemon. You can choose between 4 moves. The opponent can choose X many moves, right? And in Dragon Quest XI, you're probably going to be using one move over and over. You can adjust for elemental weaknesses, yes. If you've got, you might be defending depending on this. And I know there are challenge bosses challenge battles in Dragon Quest XI, but I don't know. I feel like Pokemon, like the oldest Pokemon there is, has more depth than Dragon Quest XI.
Well, I don't think so, because there's a lot of different ways, especially for mages, to play. For example, there are some spells that can, instantly kill an enemy, but, it has a very high chance of missing. There's other...
Thwack, yeah.
Whack.
And in Pokemon, there's Fissure and what are some other? Sheer Cold. I mean, those exist in Pokemon too.
But did they exist in Pokemon Red?
Yes,
Blue?
they did. Blue has Sheer Cold and Fissure.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I didn't remember that. I thought
Pokemon was heavily inspired by Dragon Quest. Heavily.
Absolutely. I mean,
think
there's a lot to be said about having so many different characters to be able to switch from. I
Right.
think when you're just talking about depth, but we're not talking about fun,
Yeah.
and I think maybe that's important.
So I did not have fun with Dragon Quest XI. There were, I mean, like I said, the music was a big part of it. I tried to turn off the music; it would not let me. At least I couldn't find
Wait,
it.
because you mentioned it already, I've got to stop you.
Yeah, please.
There. I really like love the Dragon Quest soundtracks, including 11. They're like my favorite video game soundtracks, and like I used to study for exams in medical school, and like for hours, like for 8 hours per day, like for weeks, and I would just listen to Dragon Quest soundtracks, especially also 11, like throughout the whole day. I think it's a different kind of thing because I also think it's much better music than Final Fantasy, and I don't think in a lot of ways, if you compare it, like Koichi Sugiyama, the composer, he's a very famous, well-known classical composer, even before he composed Dragon Quest. So obviously it comes down to taste because it's a more kind of classical style, but I think, objectively, he has, even before Dragon Quest, he was a famous musician. Not a video game musician, just a famous orchestral musician. And I think Final Fantasy music is still good, but I like even playing through 7 or whatever, I remember there being some weird tracks I really didn't enjoy. I really thought didn't fit like with the atmosphere. And in the end, it's not comparable. I think he's what's the name of the Final Fantasy composer?
Nobuyo.
Yeah, there are a few it depends on the game, but
okay, but I think the most famous one is Nobuo Uematsu, yes. And I think he also mentioned that he was inspired by Koichi Sugiyama, starting out.
Yeah.
Or starting off.
Yeah.
So I think obviously it's comes down to taste. They have a very different sound, and in the end, the whole Dragon Quest package is something more. It's really traditional, It's something not simple in a bad sense, but in a not maximalist sense. It's a very traditional game that gives you a very traditional experience with very traditional music. And in the end, if you like that, and this is, the skeleton or the base of RPGs that everything else is made of, then you enjoy that. Then, if you play like Breath of Fire or whatever, or I don't know, other from the JRPGs from the SNES era, if you enjoy these games, then I think you can really appreciate Dragon Quest a lot. And
okay. I'm going to talk more about Dragon Quest music, or just music in general. So,
yeah,
if you like Dragon Quest music, the actual music is fine. Like it's not my thing, right? It's fine.
Yeah.
How it's implemented into the game is different though. The constant, there's no ambiance. It's constantly blaring in your head. Like it's about how it's put into the game, right? Final Fantasy games, the developers and the composers of those games, because there's more than one, are masters at using music to kind of like drive the moment, right? They are absolute masters at it. Not to mention the actual music is incredible. If you listen to, and it doesn't have to be Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII is obviously the most famous Final Fantasy. But if you listen to music from generally any kind of Final Fantasy game, you're gonna get a sense of what's going on, either a scene or if it's ambient music in a zone, you're gonna get a sense of what that zone is, right? Mm-hmm. From my experience with Dragon Quest XI, it's not like that, right? You're in a field and it's just trumpets, it's parade, it's, bombastic, like adventure music, yes, right? What you'd see on like a Super Nintendo Yeah. And for that time, that was what that needed to be, because they were working with very small file-sized games. They didn't have access to huge orchestras. They, everything was MIDI music, essentially. But now, I think that's what it's called, MIDI music. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
But now they have access, they have ways of putting music into games in different ways to drive whatever they want you to feel or think at the time. If you can listen to a random boss fight. And look, Final Fantasy 16, if you guys have played it, I have a lot of problems with Final Fantasy 16, right? But the music is not one of those problems, right? You can listen to a track from Final Fantasy 16 from any boss fight, and you can get an idea of what is happening in that boss fight. And that's saying something, because the boss fights in Final Fantasy 16 are all over the place. It's things happen in that game that are crazy, and you can listen to music from that without ever having played it and think, oh, wait, this kind of sounds like a giant space dragon battle fight right now, because that's something that's literally happening on the screen, right? You can listen to music from Final Fantasy 9, it just ambient music from what I think that's like a PlayStation 1 game, and you can get a sense of what that zone was like. But it's not just Final Fantasy games. The same is true with Xenoblade Chronicles, the Xenoblade games. The same is true with the Tales games, to a lesser extent. I feel like the Tales games weren't quite as great with their music. But most JRPGs have music that really drives home whatever's going, and Dragon Quest XI, it just doesn't. The final I remember...
It really does.
The only music...
I don't know, did you play through it? Did you get to the mermaid part?
I beat the game. Yes, I've got to the mermaid. You're on the boat and you have to go to the zone with the mermaids. Wait, yeah. And
there was a touching moment with the mermaid.
The only touching moment I remember, I mean, spoilers for a 10-year-old game. When did Dragon Quest XI come out? Do you guys know?
It's been a while.
2017? Maybe earlier?
Something like that.
It's almost been a while.
10 years old.
Yeah, it's almost 10 years old. Okay, so spoilers for Dragon Quest XI. One of the characters dies. She's the little mage who's actually like a 25-year-old woman in the form of a girl. I think she's like trapped in her child body or something. The sister of the healer, right? I don't remember their names. I do remember vaguely what they look like. And the girl, the little one, dies.
Serena and Veronica.
And I think Veronica is the one that died. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that moment was like, oh, like I actually somewhat liked that character. She was important to my combat build, which her she was like a typical mage, and she gets like merged with the healer. So okay. She was one of the more interesting characters, and that is the only moment in that game that I remember. I mean, that's it. I remember running around an open field and being annoyed with the music. I remember I guess the last boss is is like a big black dragon or something, and then I remember her dying. That's what I remember. And everything else about that game is just so forgettable to me.
I think the story of a lot of Dragon Quest games are different. They are also more simple, but not they're not badly written. Do you, Daisy, remember the part with the mermaid?
I didn't finish it, so no, I don't.
Oh, and sorry, Daisy.
I'm not. No, I mean, it's okay. I would have said something if I thought it mattered to me. Yeah. But no, I didn't finish the game. And I liked it just fine. I really had fun with it. I bought it right when it came out. I just didn't feel the need or the urge to see it through to completion. And a big part of it was because the story wasn't really hitting me in a way that I felt like I needed to. But I did have fun playing something that was more that style, just as a matter of something different. Especially, two Denzi brought up Final Fantasy 16. And I ultimately like that game. I do have a lot of gripes with it, but it would be a very easy one to if the Final Fantasy 7 remakes weren't around to really laud as being brilliant, JRPG design from Square. If we're holding 16 next to Dragon Quest XI would be a more interesting conversation, I think.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 16 has a very interesting story. It has like some of the best voice acting I've ever heard in a game, and just about everything else about the game is just okay. I don't, I'm kind of not of the mind that like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest have to be typical turn-based games. I think that combat, like their series that aren't linked to their combat, right? That's kind of why I'm like, Dragon Quest has the just super basic combat. It could do something with that. It could change it up somehow, right? It could evolve it over time. 16, but 16 is like too much of a departure, and also, so it's an action RPG. It's not a JRPG. It just isn't. It has levels, right? It has stats, but they all mean nothing. All the gear literally means nothing. It's just you put on the next sword because it's better than the last one. There's no like elemental anything. There's no deciding.
No building.
There's no like building of characters. But also, and that's fine. Like, I like an action RPG occasionally. Just Devil May Cry. That's what I think of it. It's like a Devil May Cry game, but it's a boring Devil May Cry game. Like the combat in Final Fantasy 16, there isn't a whole lot to it. There's no real reason to do different combos. There are different like abilities, and they do slightly different things, but all of them are just damage. It's not like I'm using one thing to buff myself up, using another thing to debuff the enemy, and then I do this like heavy attack. It's all just damage. It's all just different ways of doing damage, and it's super flashy, super cool. And I think the summon battles are really awesome.
Summon battles are cool.
They're very cool. They're also movies. I
think that's the thing is like, I think Final Fantasy 16 was more like kind of what was being said earlier. That game is more like watching like a really good TV show.
Yeah. Damian, did you ever play Final Fantasy 16? Are you familiar with it at all?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
I
mean, it is extremely well written. It'd be a very fun game to watch a Let's Play of.
Yeah.
It is very, very good in terms of like quality of story and like the art and the music and the direction and the design. All of that is so good, but it does lose the adventure feeling and the strategic thinking that I think is essential to like Final Fantasy games. Yeah. And so I think holding that next to the latest Dragon Quest game, I think Dragon Quest fans would have a lot more ground to stand on and saying, but look, you have to think, and there's these options, and it's more classical, and you have a party, and you have like,
I said that I think Pokemon Blue probably has more depth than Dragon Quest XI, but Dragon Quest XI definitely has more depth than Final Fantasy 16.
Yes, absolutely.
What I want to say also about the story, that like to me the most enjoyment, as you said, is the adventure feeling and the atmosphere in all the Dragon Quest games. The most memorable moments for me are the ones where nothing special happens. I just remember the places a lot, the atmosphere, the music, the monster designs. I think it's just a very memorable, personally pleasing to me package. So for me, having like, wow, the government plots against us and it's a huge conspiracy and it's like, are robots humans and stuff like that? I don't care about it. About plots like these, very often they tend to be contrived. It can be good, but I mean, in the end, I can get it, why people would like that. But for me, scripts in video games are more so for the characters or about little things than about maximalist cinematic things. I don't enjoy cinematic stuff that much, even though I do enjoy that in some video games, like in Metal Gear Solid. I would say even like The Last of Us, right, is quite cinematic as a game, or even Resident Evil. But, this whole atmosphere thing, to kind of bring it back, because I did want to mention it about Mario Odyssey, that I think for me, even the atmosphere and the feeling for me was not a Mario feeling.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna beat you up about that. As soon as you were talking about the atmosphere and like the places, and I was like, I wanted to like, the devil horns went up, and I was like, you didn't find any of that in Mario Odyssey, Damian? You didn't think that the Food Kingdom was whimsical? You didn't like, oh my God. I mean, it's so sad. It's just sad.
Okay.
I would hate to be you and not be able to find the whimsy in Mario Odyssey.
We've talked a lot about.
I am being able. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, we've talked a lot about Mario Odyssey. We've talked a lot about Dragon Quest and other things. But Daisy, we have not heard your controversial opinion yet.
Yeah, true.
Well, that's the problem. Is that I really, I'm a bit of a fence sitter. My favorite games are all over the board. I love a lot of games that are not perfect or very good. I'm a big Suda 51 fan. It's like it's hard. Like I like a lot of crappy games. And so when I was really sitting down trying to think of my controversial opinions, I don't really feel like I could say anything that was as hard lined as anything that either of you two had. So I came in here today really prepared to play defense.
Which you did.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
Which you did. In my case.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm sorry. It's because your opinion was bad, and I hope that we can still be friends. But, I love Mario Odyssey. That game's great. I'm excited to play through it again. Dragon Quest 11, it didn't really vibe with me all the way through, but I felt like it was good money spent, and I enjoyed my time with it, and it was very cute and fun. And I like all of those, and I can appreciate where they come from. Something that I thought about a lot while we were talking about Dragon Quest. Did either of you ever play like RPG Maker games, or did you ever use RPG Maker yourselves?
I tried. I mean, maybe if I like really sat down and worked at it, I could do something.
Yeah.
But I was like, I really tried, and I just could not. I couldn't get anywhere. Like it's supposed to be super easy. It wasn't that easy.
Yeah. So I mean, the reason I bring it up is because we were talking about Dragon Quest, and I was a little RPG Maker freak. Like I really when I was in middle school and high school, I've probably made like 30 games in there.
Wow.
And I used to be part of the community and download everybody else's games and stuff like that. And something that really, really, really sticks out, the original RPG Maker and XP, which is the one that I was using, for a long time, it was a Dragon Quest making software. Yeah. It was like when we were talking about making RPGs, you were making a Dragon Quest game.
Yeah.
And they did add features later on where you can make your combat a little bit more like Final Fantasy V. And later, I also played some amazing ones that people made where they just like used the tools to make their own combat systems that completely disregarded the built-in stuff for the engine. But I really appreciated, as I was playing these games, that I was sitting there, and even though mechanically so many of these games were the same, the stories that were being told through the mechanics was different every time. And you could be so creative with this software, and without knowing anything, you could make Dragon Quest 1. But with some knowledge, you really could get in there and you can get very detailed, very specific, make your own assets, whatever. There are a lot of great fan favorite games that were made in RPG Maker. In Stars in Time is a really good example of that. Yumi Nikki is another one that's made in RPG Maker. And I don't know. It's just there's something in there that made me really feel a lot of appreciation for the Nintendo era Dragon Quest games. And I think that even though it wasn't my bag in there, and I could still look at these like big budget games that are being made, and the mid budget games like Clair Obscur that are reinventing what they were doing with an RPG, there was something to be said as like the Dragon Quest style RPG as a medium for storytelling. And I think that maybe, Tudens, you'd feel differently about Dragon Quest XI if the story was closer to like what was written in Final Fantasy 16, with more betrayals, more character interaction, more growth,
intrigue.
More like maybe not a silent protagonist.
Yeah. So I would agree, because guess what? I really liked Final Fantasy 16, and Final Fantasy 16 had not every side quest was boring, but the side quests were generally boring and pointless.
Yep.
The combat was, it was nothing. It was kind of nothing in a way. It was very cinematic.
I thought it was fun.
Yeah, like
but it wore thin
arcadey,
really quick.
arcadey, but like not in a good way. But the story was really good, like super interesting. I'm not like a big Game of Thrones fan, but it has that kind of vibe. The characters I thought were fairly enjoyable to kind of to get to know, and I thought they were pretty great. And I really enjoyed that game. And if that game had a bad story, I would definitely not have finished that game. I would not have finished Final Fantasy 16 if it didn't have a good story. So if Dragon Quest 11 had a good story, I probably would have enjoyed it more, yes. Because, again, the one thing that I always remember about that game that actually like made me care was when Veronica died. Because it was kind of unexpected. They did it well. I definitely did it well. And if there were more things in the game like that, if there was a more interesting plot, if the characters kind of grew to know each other more and like interact with each other more, I probably would have liked it a lot more. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, everything that you're saying is very much what I'm hearing about Clair Obscur, by the way. I know none of us have played that, but I have some friends who are basically like, bothering me every single day to play that game, so they have somebody to talk to about it, because it is a JRPG style video game, but it delivers characters and narrative in a way that's like really powerful. And I think that it's really fun to be at this point that we are in video games, because there's a lot of deconstructionalism happening in the indie space, and now in the AA space too, where we're starting to look at like genre as a video game. There's one way to look at it, but now we're starting to figure out what can you do with a genre of video game. Yeah. A really good example would be Undertale.
Yes, I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, that game's genius, and it absolutely says what can you do with a JRPG style system that you wouldn't expect or hasn't been done before. And that game does not do Final Fantasy VII level rebirth, like creating new stuff. It's very straightforward, but it is wholly fresh, wholly new, wholly beautiful. The Deltarune chapters 3 and 4 just came out. I've been watching my kids play through those, and once again, I'm blown away at like the level of complexity and heart that like these games are capable of having. And that's really what I'm here for. So I would love Dragon Quest XI to be maybe more experimental, but experimental in the narrative, in the characters, and the way that they tell their story, and maybe that makes it just fine to keep the mechanics where they are and predictable.
You look at it from a bird's eye view. Undertale has an incredibly simple story, but the way it's told it's totally revolutionary. I mean,
the cultural footprint is huge.
Yeah, I don't think
I think there's a big point. Yeah,
sorry. I think Undertale came before. I think Undertale inspired Doki Doki Literature Club, right? You guys know what Doki Doki Literature Club is?
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely, like, you saw games take what Undertale did and push it into new directions and led to incredible things. Doki Doki Literature Club, incredible. Like, that game, I don't like those kind of games, right? Visual novels are not my thing. Typically, like, spoilers for anyone who doesn't know what Doki Doki Literature Club is, like, psychological horror is not typically something I'm super interested in, but Doki Doki Literature Club it just gripped me, and I think that game exists because of Undertale.
Yeah. I think, like, for me, the thing I enjoyed the most, I didn't care that much about the combat. I think in many ways it's not even, like, it's maybe more of an action RPG than a JRPG. Because the main point of the combat is, like, you move, you react to things. Which I really enjoyed, by the way.
Which game are you referring to?
Yeah, which one?
Undertale.
Yeah,
no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Undertale.
When you have to dodge things with the heart and move around and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the simplicity. I actually played through it in between the last episode we played.
Oh, so neat. For the first time?
Yeah, for the first time.
Oh, wow. What a coincidence. But okay.
Yeah.
Did you play through it once?
How many times did you play through it again? Yeah, I want to play through it again, like through pacifist thing and stuff like that. My girlfriend just didn't want to play it again.
Yeah.
And I've been playing Red Dead Redemption since then. So
So-
I've been a bit busy, but I definitely plan on playing through it in all endings or all routes that you can take.
Good. So the thing about Undertale is, yes, it is incredibly simple, but what they do with that simplicity really goes to show like how far you can go with a combat system. That's why, like, you know, again, Dragon Quest XI combat system is really simple and they don't do a whole lot with it. But Undertale is super simple too, but they sure do a lot with it. You know, there's and you have to like really explore the game to see what I'm talking about. So I do want you to. I don't want to spoil anything. I want you to experience it. But they sure do a lot with a little in that game.
Yeah, but I like the last thing that I want to say about Dragon Quest, you know, to the people that maybe haven't played it and they might be a bit confused. You know, I think most people would probably enjoy playing through Mario Odyssey. So I would actually recommend it as a game. It's one, as I said, one of the games I would like to play the least, like one of the worst video game experiences I've had. But you know, I think for a lot of people, obviously, it's not the case. For the Dragon Quest series, you have to go into it with a different mindset. It's, you know, as I said, it's tradition, it's simplicity. Would you like miso soup or would you like the Baconator? You know, miso soup, it's just soup. It has maybe, you know, a bit of seaweed inside or tofu, and that's all, you know. And, you know, you can get something else, or maybe like a burrito or a tortilla with a lot of different spices and stuff like that. You know, it comes down to what you value, and the Dragon Quest series is, you know, a pillar of JRPG tradition. So if you like the JRPG tradition, then just stick with Dragon Quest. And I think this is what Dragon Quest should keep doing. I don't want them to never innovate. They have innovated a lot. Actually capturing monsters and having them fight for you was an innovation that was done in Dragon Quest V. Probably my favorite Dragon Quest game. And this is actually where Pokemon get the idea from. But, you know, it still fits in the whole traditional package. And I think if you expect a lot of crazy twists and stuff like that, and a lot of drama and backstabbing and stuff like that, it might not be the case. And that's okay. You know, if it's not your cup of tea, you don't need to like or you don't need to play Dragon Quest. And I understand that it might be for a lot of people difficult to get into. Like even me, I grew up playing Dragon Quest IX, and up until that point, I didn't get that much into JRPGs, and so I didn't like it that much, because for me also the story wasn't so interesting. Like I just enjoyed Pokemon much more at the time. But since then, my tastes have changed, and in the end, it's a question of taste. But the last thing that I want to, since Daisy didn't have a controversial take, I have a bonus controversial take that I mentioned before, actually in the podcast. It's that I think that Breath of the Wild is the worst Zelda game. Mic drop. So, my case is, I think, you know, Breath of the Wild is a very good game. I think, especially also compared to Mario Odyssey, which is slop, in my opinion. I think it's like very well made. It has the Nintendo signature, whereas I would argue that Mario Odyssey doesn't have the Miyamoto signature because it's the first game that wasn't even made by him. I think it's very beautiful. Breath of the Wild, obviously, as a game. I did enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would, because I had overhyped it a lot. But I remember enjoying it a lot. I think it's a very important video game. But I think, you know, what it did in the end, even if you compare it to Zelda 1, it strays quite far away from the Zelda formula. And I think it is a very lonely gaming experience for me, even more so than a lot of other Zelda games, I would say. Because you have only Link, silent protagonist. A lot of the other characters, except like the friends of Link, they're fine, I guess. They're nothing special, but they also don't appear that often. And other than that, a lot of time is spent around like traveling, but in a much, much different sense than in other Zelda games, even Wind Waker. So I think it's it's a certain vibe, but there's no like dungeons that can be compared. Like the beasts, I think it was a joke. Honestly, I think they're just very badly designed. I think it's quite lazy game design, in my opinion. The beast.
This is the worst. This is the worst take I've ever heard.
Hold on.
The worst thing you've ever said.
I see where you're getting it, and I would agree that Breath of the Wild is very different from any previous Zelda game, right? I've been replaying Wind Waker now, thankfully, for the Switch 2, Skyward Sword recently, and you can go to any old Zelda game, right? And they have it's like a thematic dungeon, and you go in and you complete some puzzles and you find a new item, and then you have to use that item to get further into the dungeon, right? Obviously, Breath of the Wild didn't have that. You did not get all of your tools right away. I want to be very clear about this. Both in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, you do unlock new items as you complete the dungeons or you complete the beasts, because they give you the guardian abilities, or and those abilities are items. That's what they are, right? They're items, and they're meant to be used in different ways. Breath of the Wild did have the auto revive one, which was a little bit of a non-ability, right? But the Thunder Strike, the launch, and what was the other one? Oh, and the shield. All three of those were abilities or items that you could use in the world to solve puzzles and in combat, right? So you did unlock these things. There were other things that you kind of unlocked throughout it as well, but it is less than previous Zelda games, right? But I get it. The beasts all had kind of the same look. They all kind of had the same vibe, right? And so you think about traditional dungeons, you're not seeing it. Tears of the Kingdom had different vibes, different looking dungeons, but they kind of functioned the same as the beasts, which is okay. So I get that. The dungeons aren't quite as thematic as they used to be. But
I mean, even the puzzles, the design itself.
True, very true. I'm not going to argue against that, especially after like playing Skyward Sword again and playing Wind Waker. I'm not going to argue with that. But the world itself, I realized that their kind of view of it, yes, it's an open world, and yes, you can do a whole bunch of things, but the dungeons aren't just the beasts. The dungeons aren't just the temples in Tears of the Kingdom. The dungeons are the whole, like, once you get into the zone, you solve the mystery or whatever it is going on. You unlock the ability to get to those places. You have to meet different characters and use different items and abilities to solve whatever problems they have, and then they open the way to the dungeon. I'm thinking about Tears of the Kingdom. I'm thinking about the and I know you're talking about Breath of the Wild, but I'm thinking about Tears of the Kingdom. I'm thinking about the dungeon with the Rito, where you are going to the boat in the sky, and the boat itself is a relatively short dungeon, right? Oh, my mic just fell off. Hold on 1 second. The boat itself is a relatively short dungeon, but to get there, you have to go through all this stuff with the Rito, and then you have to go through an incredible gauntlet of climbing the sky to get to this boat, and then you get to the boat, you solve the puzzles inside the boat, and then you have a crazy boss fight, right? Breath of the Wild, you go to the Zora, right? You have to help them. I don't remember what you have to do. You have to help the king somehow find his daughter or something. You're helping out the shark prince that everybody loves. Then you have to stop the elephant, the beast, from spraying tons of water. You have to do this crazy, like, skiing mini game to get into it, and then you finally get into it, and then you got to solve all these puzzles, right? It's all
Which are a big nothing burger.
all one big experience, right? And then after that, there's even more to explore in those zones, and you now have a new ability that can help you explore it better, right? It's a lot. And yeah, I mean, the shrines, the Koroks, they were, they always had the same reward. It was relatively basic, right? There's no boomerang, there's no hook shot. I get that. But what they, Zelda, they realized Zelda needed to evolve, and they evolved it, like, incredibly. And then we got Echoes of Wisdom, which kind of took the traditional Zelda and the modern Zelda and put it together. And say what you want about that game, because I know there were issues with, like, performance, and I know that some people weren't super thrilled with, like, the ending for whatever reason. Well, I thought it was really cool. That game has some of the tightest puzzle solving I have seen in a video game, and that's with a game where you have hundreds upon hundreds of different items that you can use at any different moment, and there's no, like, specific item that you unlock for each dungeon. There are many, many different ways to solve each dungeon, and yet the puzzle solving was still really, really tight. And that game was, the reason that game is that way is because of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Like how they
What about you, Daisy?
What? Yeah.
Because I think you're jonesing to hit back at me.
Yeah, I mean, it's more the way that you say things, Damian, than, like, the opinion. Like, there's this big, like, we had a very good, like, strokes and folks conversation about Dragon Quest, and that was very easy. You can be like, oh, maybe you like this, maybe you don't, okay, like, all right. But, like, all right, first of all, I'm having trouble letting go of Odyssey, but you just said Odyssey was slop, which is just such a bad take, like, so incredibly wrong, and then the thing too is when you're saying, like, Breath of the Wild being the worst Zelda game, like, honestly, there is a big part of me that has disappointment with the modern Zelda games, and that part of me has had to be reconciled with, because, when I got Breath of the Wild, I was disappointed that it wasn't more traditional dungeons. I did kind of just want, like, prettier, bigger, like another Skyward Sword or whatever like that, because I love all of those games. But once I got over that, like an adult does, I really started feeling like Breath of the Wild was brilliant. It really was. It kind of felt like its own thing, and it was a brilliant, extremely well-designed game. And I think exactly what Tudens was saying is really, really important, because it is, like, what you're saying about the dungeons, it is lacking those. And that's, like, easy to look at. But the way that Tudens just put it, the way that, like, everything leads up to the dungeon and, like, leads off of the dungeon, the peak of the dungeon experience, you're saying you had a bad time with, which, fair enough. I don't agree. But I can see how, like, that would rub you the wrong way. But I do think that those games are, like, masterfully designed. They're brilliant games, and they don't just, like, they're not just doing different for the sake of different. They're doing different because there was a very clear vision of what they wanted to do instead, and in addition to what they've been doing before. And I think that Echoes of Wisdom, which I really, really liked, I have not finished that game, but I do really like it. I think that was a very nice, it was a bone to throw. It was saying, hey, there is still traditional Zelda, and we are always going to push boundaries, but, like, nothing's getting abandoned, nothing's getting left behind. But there is a part of me that's kind of like, man, I do kind of wish that we had something more in line with, like, Ocarina of Time or something like that.
But it's arguably, like, Echoes of Wisdom is arguably even less Zelda than Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, because you're Zelda, the whole mechanic.
Hold on. Stop. Zelda is the main character of The Legend of Zelda and has been since Skyward Sword. And you know what? I'm going to write that down. It's a video idea. I'm going to make a video on that someday. Zelda is the main character of The Legend of Zelda. Link is not the main character. Link is just who you play as. I am so happy that in Echoes of Wisdom we played as Zelda, because Link hasn't been the main character since Wind Waker. Link has not been the main character since Wind Waker.
Yeah.
Zelda is the main character, and I mean, typically we play as Link, but Echoes of Wisdom, it was made better because we were Zelda, in my opinion.
I agree. I agree. I'm not attacking Echoes of Wisdom.
Okay, I'm just I just had to make a comment.
I just think that even though it is more revolutionary in some aspects, like you playing a Zelda and it being very different, it is, I think, in some aspects more traditional because it's, in the end, at its core, it's more of a Zelda game. Whereas Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are more of an open world type game, like more like Skyrim and whatever. And I think, in the end, most Zelda games, even the 3D Zelda games, are at its core Zelda games. And I would argue, again, I didn't call Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom bad video games. I do think they're very, very good video games. I just think they're bad Zelda games. Because the experience that they bring is not the Zelda experience. Just like Hyrule Warriors or whatever it's called, it might be a really nice hack and slash and whatever, but it has a Zelda skin, and if it was like a mainline Zelda game, it might be a good game, but it wouldn't be a good Zelda game. Zelda has a very specific kind of formula, specific kind of core skeleton, and I think Breath of the Wild is not Zelda enough to be a good Zelda game. I think, for example,
I disagree.
I think there's two. I think 2D Zelda and 3D Zelda both have very different skeletons, and of the 3D Zeldas, there's only Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess,
Skyward Sword.
There's five. There's like 12 2D Zeldas, which all generally have the same skeleton, and I would, Echoes of Wisdom was kind of part of that, right? But then I would say that now there's two new Zeldas, there's two compared to 5, right? And I think eventually there might be just as many new style of Zeldas as there are 3D Zeldas, right? And Echoes of Wisdom's kind of a combination of both, or kind of a combination of all three. So yeah, I don't know. Zelda's evolved a lot over time. Skyward Sword was almost entirely motion controls, which, by the way, playing through Skyward Sword on the Switch and using the Pro Controller controls, I hate that. I'm going back to the motion controls because those were more intuitive and more fun. That's so different, though. I mean, that's like a completely different, not even style of gameplay. That's like just a completely different way to play a game. Yeah. And that's a Zelda game.
But nonetheless, I think what makes Zelda Zelda is, I think, how would we define it? There would be some kind of combat, right? There would be some kind of exploration and navigation in a kind of open world, but not as open as like Skyrim or whatever. Mm-hmm. There are sometimes like human settlements, and then a big thing behind all of this, in the overworld world, you fight enemies, and then you have the dungeons, which are basically half of the game in most Zelda games, except for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And I think it's a really big thing, right? To miss like half of what makes Zelda games.
Yeah, but again, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, the dungeons expand out from the dungeon, right? They're the zone. Yeah, they're the whole saga that goes into them.
And the spirit of dungeons exists in the shrines. Yeah. Which they are their own thing, but the spirit of dungeons exists in the shrines.
And in Tears of the Kingdom,
while you're experiencing,
in Tears of the Kingdom, you go to the Spirit Temple, right? Hopefully, you guys have both seen this, but you go to the Spirit Temple. That dungeon expands across the entirety of the depths. Like the depths are that dungeon, because the dungeon itself is just a boss fight, but you're going all across the depths for that one dungeon. I think that's all one dungeon.
The philosophy of the design of the new Zelda games is that they have integrated that half of the game that you're talking about into the other half of the game. And so I don't think that there is more overworld than there is dungeon in the modern Zelda games. I just think that the parameters of what qualifies as dungeon has been both like segmented and splintered up and interwoven into the rest of the game. And so while the beasts are, like, if you're looking at that and saying these are the only dungeons in the game, there's 4 of them and they're all fairly straightforward. I did think that some of them were pretty challenging, honestly. I remember the camel being a whole deal.
Oh yeah,
you know, but the point is they do all kind of look similar, and the puzzles are all kind of similar to each other. If you think, oh, those are the dungeons and everything else is the open world stuff, then yeah, that's a bad balance. But that isn't the philosophy. The philosophy isn't that, oh, we like the open world parts of Zelda and we want to make that more of the game. The philosophy was that we love the dungeon parts of Zelda and we want to interweave that and like meld that in and blur the lines, you know. And so while I do think, again, this is a strokes and folks conversation where you can say that, like, I really want to spend time in a Zelda dungeon. I like the vibe in like the older Zelda games where you enter a dungeon, everything's different. Here's your weird music. You're in here for hours trying to figure shit out, you know, and then you finally escape and it feels like, oh my God, I overcame that. And they did change it. And we have to realize, especially with the way that Damian feels about these two things, this is similar to the change that they did with the new modern Mario games, with Mario Odyssey, where we have a lot of little moons and a lot of little things that are interwoven more into the natural world. And it's not about going into a stage and doing the big thing to get the big reward. There are big things and big rewards, but you know, that part of the game is integrated into the rest of it to make it a more holistic experience. And, you know, again, I think that it's a flavor, you know, issue more so than it is a good or bad or a game design issue. Yeah. Because again, the slop word made me so mad because both of these games are master classes in game design. These games are extraordinarily well-designed video games. These games are the reason that Nintendo thrives, even though they have inferior hardware every generation, even though they don't have all the third parties. It's like they thrive because they make games better than most other people are capable of making games with less resources.
Right.
And so Mario Odyssey is a brilliantly designed game, and Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are amazingly well-designed video games. And I have a friend in real life who gives me the same thing that you do about Breath of the Wild, where he's like, it just doesn't feel like a Zelda game to me. And that is fair. But what Tudens just said about the future of Zelda and the evolutions of Zelda, get used to it, bucko. Because we are entering, this is a new kind of Zelda game, and I hope that they keep doing more stuff. I would love to see kind of a revival.
I mean, we already have the Elder Scrolls.
Yeah.
You know,
but it's not that.
Yeah, it's not the.
It's not even trying to be the Elder Scrolls. It's not even close. It's not even like a little bit. You know, I wouldn't even say that the Elder Scrolls is like an influence on Breath of the Wild. I would point at like Minecraft first, or I would point at Terraria, or I would point at like, you know, I don't know.
But even
I wouldn't be pointing at.
I think Breath of the Wild was so unique. I think it's its own. Breath of the Wild inspired an entire genre of games. You look at Genshin Impact, which I played for 600 hours. That stupid gacha game. Thankfully, I never spent a cent on it. Right?
My son is addicted. We're in the same boat.
That game is a Breath of the Wild clone. Everything about that game, other than the gacha mechanics, is based on Breath of the Wild. The elements, the way combat works, the way the game feels, everything. It's Breath of the Wild. That's what that game is, you know? And that game's massive. That game is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. No, you're totally right about that. And again, that kind of supports Damian a little bit. It's just the nasty words you use to describe your opinions made me so upset.
Okay.
We could have been reasonable.
Before we wrap this up, I have one more actual hot take related to Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom that I would bet if we got comments on, they'd probably like flay me alive for.
Oh, let's hear it.
I think Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have the most beautiful Zelda story in any Zelda game, period. And I'm probably one of the best not told stories, but one of the best stories in Nintendo games in general. Yeah, there are probably indie developers and other developers that have written better stories, I'm sure. But I think it's a beautiful story. I agree with the general consensus that it's not told well. It just isn't, right? Because of how they structured the memories, and, you know, they didn't do a great job of like translating like the events of Breath of the Wild into Tears of the Kingdom and making continuity. But the story from a bird's eye view, what happens from start to finish, I think is like beautiful. It's like beautiful.
Yeah.
And again,
I agree with that wholly.
The main character ain't Link. It's all Zelda.
Yeah.
Zelda's the main character. It's her development. It's her story, even though she's almost never on screen. I think that story is beautiful. That's why I actually think the upcoming Warriors game, the Age of Imprisonment game, I think that's going to be really good. Even Age of Calamity, which is not even considered canon for some stupid reason, they decided to give it this weird time travel alternate universe thing and make it not canon. I think even that game is like really good about creating a good story for her. The story itself, I think, is just absolutely incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And it is unlike any Zelda game. Even Skyward Sword, which I would consider the next best, it's unlike any Zelda game.
I agree. I mean, because I am a little freak, Majora's Mask is my favorite Zelda game.
Majora's Mask does have a very unique story.
It does, but again, that game isn't really, it's not the story that is like the perfect element. It is what the story causes. It is the characters. It is the situations. There's a moment in Majora's Mask that really always blew my mind, where on the third and final night, when the moon is coming and it's your very last moment, if you go to the ranch with the sisters who raise the horses and whatnot, it's been hinted at that there's like a fermented milk drink that they're drinking. There's like a special milk drink that like intoxicates you. And on the very last night, when the aliens are coming and the older sister has resolved that they are going to die tonight, you talk to the little sister and she's been drinking the fermented drink, and the older sister has like given her like essentially like a mind altering substance to like dull her to the reality of like their incoming like death. And that theme of termination and death just echoes over the whole thing. So while I really I have to give that nod, where I got to say that has the most impactful like story and notions and ideas to me, the actual narrative of the Breath of the Wild era video games is so good. It's actually like Zelda is not just the main character, but a great character, and is somebody like the Breath of the Wild Zelda character is one of the best, most fleshed out, dynamic, beautiful, mythological, like Nintendo characters that they've ever given. Probably the best one.
Yeah.
Like almost certainly like the most interesting and best character they've ever created. And that is something that Nintendo has never felt too compelled about. I was joking with my friends who are playing Mario Kart, and they're trying to figure out where is this? And I'm like, Nintendo doesn't care. You know what I mean? Like they don't do lore. It doesn't matter where this is. There is no connected world. It's just what their characters that they use for whatever they need. But Zelda has permission, and Metroid as well, which we didn't talk about. But Zelda has permission to be beautiful. Yeah. It has permission to be narrative, and they really do swing that one out of the park. And if that's not a Zelda game, it's like, I think that's the big thing where you said, Damian, it doesn't feel like a Zelda game. It's like, if this isn't a Zelda game, but it is literally the showcase for Zelda, Princess Zelda, it's like, I don't know, man. This is just what's happening. This is where we're at.
Yeah, this is more like the script. I want to say that I said that about Breath of the Wild. I think Tears of the Kingdom got kind of closer. I think with the kind of fusion mechanics and all of that, I would consider it like a Zelda game, like a good Zelda game. Personally, subjectively, according to my taste, I would still prefer a lot of other Zelda games, even if they're less
Wind Waker is my favorite Zelda game.
Yeah, same. Majora's Mask is mine.
I think just to also give my opinion on the story of Breath of the Wild, I think it's fine. It's not bad. I really like what they did with Zelda. I agree that Zelda is the most interesting she's ever been, and I like that direction. However, I do agree that Majora's Mask, it doesn't have a linear story, but, in the end, the story is also, what they say in the side quests and all of that. That's part of the story.
Yeah.
And for me, it's even more important than the main story. In a lot of games, just like in Dragon Quest, for example, like in a lot of JRPGs, I think I care more about the little story snippets that you can miss. And And Majora's Mask, another very like deep moment was with the lovers on the third day, if you remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But
but
the thing
I
about
think
Breath of
no
the
others.
Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is that, I mean, they have side quests and they have little stories, right? But so much of the story is like told through the world. Like you have to pay attention to details, and you have to infer some things, and you got to read the diaries that you'll find around the world.
Ludo narrative again.
Yeah, and then you have to take it in context with the memories. And here's where they went wrong, right? Breath of the Wild wasn't so bad, right? Because the memories you could view in any order and it'd be fine, right? Tears of the Kingdom, I don't know why they did this. I'm sure someone at Nintendo was smart enough to realize that what they were the memories that they were having, that they were putting into the game, actually had like a cohesive story. And if you saw one of them that happened later, you like spoil what happens throughout the rest of the story. So for some reason they decided not to set the order, and they could have done that. I'm sure, programming is hard, but I'm sure they could have said, oh, you unlocked this one, well, it doesn't matter that it's on this side of the world, this is the first memory that you get.
It's the next one.
That's what they did wrong. And then among other things, I mean, there's characters that you meet in Tears of the Kingdom that you also optionally could have met in Breath of the Wild that should know who you are, and they don't necessarily in Tears of the Kingdom because, I don't know, maybe Nintendo didn't want people to be confused if they played Tears of the Kingdom and not Breath of the Wild. I think that's dumb. I think they should have just hard committed to it being a sequel, but the story in Tears of the Kingdom is still really beautiful, like almost even more so than Breath of the Wild. And again, it's all those little things that you can find that you need to infer. And yeah, they're not the side quests. They're the environmental context of what's going on. There's evidence in like the zones. There's diaries that you can find. Those are the things that are so incredible about the story and how it's told.
Mm-hmm.
I
think we can all agree to that.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, so we need to wrap this up, so we are going to move on to our loot drops. For anyone who doesn't know that, we basically just recommend certain either content creators or pieces of media that we think you might be interested in based on our interests. I'm going to throw it over to Damian. You can start us off with your loot drop for the week.
Okay. I think at least Lucas should be familiar with Joseph Anderson, right?
For sure. He's the inspiration of my channel.
Yeah. So, I didn't get, because we got into the heated debate or bloodbath rather, but Joseph Anderson has done a video where I think he, explains very well in 2 hours.
I was
my
wondering.
Views on. Yeah.
I was a little bit familiar with the argument you were having for Super Mario Odyssey. I was wondering if you'd seen that video.
Yeah, I had all of what I said. This was my opinion before watching that, and then I watched it and I was like, Thank you for finally putting it into words and proving it to people.
Just for the record, anybody who's watching that video makes my wife so mad. She legit can't even listen to it. I do appreciate the video. I think it's a good video. I disagree with it, but I think it's a good video.
Yeah.
All right,
Daisy, how about yours?
All right. So for mine, I was thinking, what makes a good game? What makes something that people will love? What are the little things that go into it that kind of like make it beautiful or interesting or fascinating? And the absolute best of the best, like the person on the internet who has put together a completely accessible compendium made up of mostly short little videos is Masahiro Sakurai. Making games with Masahiro Sakurai. If you do not know, this is the gentleman who created Super Smash Brothers, is behind Kirby, is working on Kirby Air Ride right now. And for some reason, just because he's a good soul, he used his own money to start a YouTube channel where he doesn't do ads, and he just basically put his heart and soul into making a game maker's toolkit where you can pop in there and you can look at any of his opinions about game design or sound effects or what feels good or reward and risk. And it's something that, like, even if you are not somebody who plans on making video games, as somebody who enjoys and plays video games, it will help you to make better arguments than Damian did today in our conversation.
I'm going to jump in here.
Check it out if you're interested. Very Nintendo adjacent as well.
I'm going to jump in here. I have watched every single one of Masahiro Sakurai's videos. They are fascinating. Yeah. It really, like, there was a video. A lot of people are mad. Here's another hot take. A lot of people are mad about games being $70, $80, potentially $100. I don't care about Grand Theft Auto at all, but apparently it's going to be $100. Masahiro Sakurai explains why games shouldn't be as cheap as they are. He has a video, and he convinced me. Like, obviously I don't like it. Obviously I don't. I wish Mario Kart World wasn't $80, but he gave me a good reason. He gave me a good...
I've got big thoughts, and I would love to talk to you all about, payment models and free-to-play and gacha mechanics and digital copies. And, that's a great idea for a future episode. But, I'm willing to give that a shot, too, and hear what he has to say about it.
Yeah. Okay. My loot drop, a little bit different. I'm not going to waste any time to run over. Last time I suggested the Pokemon manga. I think it's the best Pokemon there is, like, period. Like, best Pokemon media there is. This time I'm going to suggest specifically the Zelda Twilight Princess manga. Because Zelda Twilight Princess manga I think is already a good game. I think it's got a good story, like a really interesting world. The Zelda Twilight Princess manga is something else. It is something else, people. You should read it. I think if you like Zelda, I think you'll enjoy it. It's on another level. And also, just a quick note, I don't know what the channel is off the top of my head, but there's a channel that's doing an analysis, and they had like a community, like, voice acting thing where they bring in people from the community to voice act, or actual voice actors, and my wife has a role in that, and so her voice is out there.
Wow.
Her voice is out
Congratulations.
there. Yeah, it was really exciting for her, and I just think it's so
link
cool.
that up.
I don't. For sure. I'll link it. I'll find it. I'll have her show me where it is. But yeah, read that manga. Very cool. Very interesting. Link has a character, and he's like an interesting character. That's different. But yeah, thank you all for listening or watching or however you consumed this podcast. At our end screen, you will see a link to our Discord and a link to all of our channels. Go ahead and check out our channels. I'm 2Dens. I make long retrospective videos on video games and also analysis on some more modern ones. I've been kind of adjusting how I do content, so there's probably only a few of those out right now, but I have a bunch of other content that I guess if you're interested, you can check out. Daisy, can you tell us what you make?
Yep. Yeah. So I'm from the channel Amdrag, short for American Drag. It is a spiritually perennialist, philosophy and spirituality channel. So if you're looking for kind of a different take, a more modern day take on things like that, we often focus on finding beauty in things that are in our media, like anime, manga, and video games are frequently interwoven into my work. And Damian, tell us about your channel.
Yeah. My channel is Beyond Brainwaves. It's about learning things, mainly like psychology and languages. Most recently, it's mostly about languages. And yeah, never play Mario Odyssey.
Mario Odyssey more than you currently do.
Maybe check out the Switch 2 update to Mario. Okay, before the next episode, I'm going to check out the Switch 2 update to Mario Odyssey, and I'll just report on it.
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay.
And if this video gets more than 10 likes, Damian will play through all of Mario Odyssey and will get all of the moons, and then we'll come back on the next episode and apologize for how very wrong he was about it. So
then he's gonna
be sure to smash that like, gamers.
And then he's going to practice speedrunning it and get into the next GDQ for specifically Mario Odyssey speedrunning.
That's right. And then he can deep bow apologize in front of the whole world.
All right, everyone.
The dark prince of this podcast will never give in.
Thanks, everyone, for watching or listening. Have a good one.
All right, later.